The door didn't just close, it slammed like a final judgment. It wasn't only the sound, it was the way it cracked through the air and seemed to hang there, sharp and certain, before settling into a silence that felt deliberate. As if the whole town had been waiting for that moment to agree on something without ever speaking it aloud. I stood on the porch with my bundle clutched tight against my ribs, the rough cloth damp beneath my fingers. It wasn't much, 2 worn shirts, a skirt with a mended hem, a tin comb, and the last heel of bread I'd wrapped without knowing I would need it. It felt smaller now, lighter, like something that didn't belong to a person anymore, only to someone passing through. No one looked away. Mrs. Calder stood across the road, arms folded deep into her apron, her mouth pressed into a line so thin it nearly disappeared. The blacksmith's boy leaned against the doorway, turning a knife in his hands, though he hadn't scraped his boot once. Even old Mr. Tully, who squinted at the world like it owed him clarity, had turned his head just enough to mark me where I stood. They watched. Not curious, not shocked. Certain. That was what settled into me hardest. Not anger, not shame. Certainty. The kind that leaves no room for argument, no space to explain yourself into something different. I felt it then, quiet and complete. This wasn't leaving. I had been erased. The door behind me stayed shut. No latch lifted, no voice called my name. No hesitation slipped through the wood, just stillness. Heavy and settled, like it had always been closed and always would be. For a moment, just one, I thought about knocking. My fingers shifted against the bundle, loosening, as if they might reach back and try once more. I could picture it too clearly, the pause, the waiting, the hope I would have to hold in place like something fragile, and the answer I already knew. I let my hand fall. That door hadn't closed in anger, it had closed in decision, and decisions like that didn't bend for pleading. A wind moved down the street then, low and steady, carrying dust and the dry scent of grass worn thin by too many seasons. It slipped beneath my collar and along my sleeves, cold in a way that didn't belong to spring. The kind of cold that comes early, before its time, as if the world itself has decided to move on without waiting. I stepped down from the porch. The boards gave a small creak beneath my weight, stubborn and familiar. For a second, it felt like the only thing that remembered me. Then it was gone too, swallowed by the open air. No one spoke, no one stopped me. My boots met the road with a dull, hollow sound, each step pressing into the packed dirt that had once felt like something I stood on. Now it felt like something I crossed. I walked past the well first. The rope hung still, the bucket resting against the side where I had left it that morning. I didn't look long. I knew what it held. I knew how it sounded when it filled. That knowledge had nowhere to go now. Past the fence line I had mended with split fingers and borrowed wire. Past the narrow path to the church where voices softened on Sundays and hardened again by the week's first light. Each step took something with it, a place, a name, a version of myself that had fit into the shape of that town. I felt it slipping, piece by piece, not all at once, but steadily, like water draining from something cracked beyond repair. By the time I reached the rise at the edge of the road, the town had already begun to fall away behind me, roof lines dipping out of sight, smoke thinning into nothing, the last trace of it shrinking into something distant enough to pretend it had never held me at all. I didn't turn back, not because I was strong, because I understood something I hadn't before. There are moments when looking back doesn't change anything. It only proves what you've already lost. So I kept walking. And with every step forward, the person I had been there grew quieter, thinner, until even I could barely hear her anymore. By the time the town disappeared completely, I wasn't leaving. I was gone. The road stretched out empty, pale and narrow, cutting through the prairie like something drawn by a tired hand. I walked without turning back. At first I told myself it was choice, that I was being deliberate, steady, but after a while I understood the truth of it. Turning back required something to return to, and there was nothing behind me now that would open its door. The wind came low across the land, steady and unbroken. It carried the dry rustle of grass and the faint rattle of seed heads brushing against one another. There were no trees to stop it, no buildings to catch it, just open ground and sky, wide enough to swallow a person whole. It found its way through my clothes easily. By midday, the warmth had burned off, leaving behind a sharp edge in the air that didn't belong to the season. Spring should have been soft, forgiving. Instead, the cold slipped in early, quiet and insistent, settling into my sleeves, my collar, the thin space between my shoulders where I could not quite shield it. I pulled the bundle closer. It didn't help much. The road bent once, then again, though there was no reason for it that I could see. No fence line, no creek, just a wandering line through land that didn't care where it went. I followed it because it was something to follow. That was reason enough. My boots began to wear at my heels before the sun reached its height. At first it was a dull pressure, easy to ignore. Then a sharper rub, steady with each step. I adjusted my stride without thinking, shifting weight, trying to ease it. It worked for a while. Then it didn't. I didn't stop. Stopping meant thinking. Thinking meant measuring how far I'd come against how far I had left, and I had no way to measure either. The land offered no markers, no promise of anything ahead, just distance. A bird crossed overhead once, cutting a brief shadow across the ground. I watched it longer than I meant to, following the slow beat of its wings until it disappeared into the pale sky. It knew where it was going, or at least it moved like it did. I envied that. By late afternoon, the light began to thin, not dim yet, but softer, stretched long across the grass. The wind shifted with it, carrying a deeper chill that made my fingers stiff around the cloth of my bundle. I had not eaten. I knew it, but I pushed it aside. Hunger was a quiet thing at first. It could be ignored if you gave it nothing to work with. No thought, no pause. Thirst was different. My tongue felt thick, the back of my throat dry in a way that made swallowing useless. I searched the horizon more often then, not for buildings or people, but for anything that might break the sameness. A dip in the land, a line of darker green, something that might mean water. There was nothing. Only grass, bending under the wind like it was being pressed flat by an unseen hand. The sun dropped faster than I expected. One moment it hung low, heavy and gold. The next, it slipped toward the edge of the land, dragging the light with it. Shadows stretched long and thin, then disappeared entirely as the sky turned from pale to something colder. The temperature fell with it, quick, certain. I felt it first in my hands, then my feet, then deep in my chest where each breath came sharper than the last. The bundle no longer felt light. It dragged against me, not from weight, but from what little warmth it held. I stopped then, not because I wanted to, because my legs did. The road looked different in the dim light, less certain, less real. It faded at the edges, blending into the grass until I could no longer tell where one ended and the other began. I turned slowly in place. Nothing behind me, nothing ahead. Just the open prairie, stretching in every direction, empty and indifferent. The wind moved again, colder now, carrying the kind of chill that spoke of night settling in without mercy. One thought rose clear above the rest. Make it through the night. Not tomorrow, not the next town, not whatever came after, just the night. I shifted my grip on the bundle and stepped off the road. The grass was taller there, brushing against my legs, whispering as I moved through it. I searched for a low place, somewhere the wind might pass over instead of through me. Something small, something that might hold. The light faded faster, and with it, the last sense of direction I had. But I kept moving, because standing still in that cold felt too close to disappearing entirely. I did not hear the wagon at first. The wind carried everything sideways, thinning sound until it barely held shape. The grass whispered low around me, and my own steps had turned uneven, dragging just enough to blur into the same rhythm as everything else. It was the mule, I noticed, a darker shape moving against the dimming horizon, slow and deliberate. Its head dipped and lifted with a patience I could not match. Only after that did the rest of it come into view, the outline of a wagon, worn and low, rolling steady along the road I had left behind. I stopped where I stood. For a moment I thought about stepping deeper into the grass, letting it pass unseen. There was something easier in that, safer. But the cold had already begun its quiet work, settling into my hands, my back, the space behind my knees where strength fades first. I stepped back toward the road. The wagon creaked as it approached, wood shifting against iron, a slow complaint that spoke of long use. The mule did not hurry. Neither did the man driving it. He saw me before I spoke. His eyes moved once, taking me in from the ground up, the bundle, the worn hem of my skirt, the way I held myself like I was deciding whether to stay or run. He pulled the reins just enough to slow the mule, not to stop it. "You walking somewhere?" he said, his voice flat, as if the answer did not matter much either way. I swallowed once before answering. "Through the night." He looked past me then, out across the empty land, as if measuring the truth of that against what he could see. "There's nothing through the night," he said. I knew that, but I said nothing. The wagon rolled another few feet before he pulled it to a stop. The mule lowered its head, breathing slow, steam just beginning to show in the cooling air. Up close, the man looked older than I had first thought, not from years alone, but from wear. His coat was patched in two places, his hat pulled low, the brim bent from long use. There was no softness in him, no wasted motion. "Name's Cole," he said after a moment, like it was a fact I might need. I nodded once. "I don't have one worth using." That earned the smallest shift in his expression. Not surprise, not sympathy, just acknowledgement. He looked at the sky then, judging the last of the light, and then back at me. "I've got work," he said, "and not enough hands for it." I waited. He didn't offer more than that at first. The wind moved between us, carrying the smell of dust and animal sweat, the faint trace of wood smoke clinging to the wagon. "If you ride," he went on, "you work. You can't keep up, you're gone." No promise in it, no comfort, just terms. I looked at the wagon then, at the rough boards, the small space between the driver's seat and the stacked supplies behind it, a coil of rope, a crate with a broken corner, a blanket folded tight, worn thin at the edges. It wasn't much, but it was more than the road, more than the cold settling in around me, quiet and certain. "How far?" I asked. "Far enough," he said. That was all. I shifted the bundle in my hands, feeling the weight of it, small, useless in the face of what the night would bring. Then I stepped closer to the wagon. "I can keep up," I said. He studied me again, longer this time, not looking for strength, looking for something else, something harder to name. Maybe he found enough of it. He jerked his head once toward the back of the wagon. "Climb up." I didn't hesitate. My hands caught the edge of the wood, rough against my palms, and I pulled myself up, careful not to waste the motion. The boards creaked under my weight, but held. I settled near the side, keeping my bundle close, leaving space where it wasn't mine to take. Cole clicked his tongue lightly. The mule moved. The wagon rolled forward again, steady as before, as if nothing had changed. But something had. I felt it in the way the wind no longer struck me full, in the faint shelter of the wagon's side, in the simple fact that I was no longer alone in the open dark. It wasn't rescue, I understood that clearly. It was a bargain, and I had already agreed to the cost. The wagon did not stop until full dark. By then the cold had settled into everything. It clung to the boards beneath me, crept through the seams of my sleeves, and sat heavy in my chest with each breath I took. The sky had gone clear and sharp. Stars spread wide and indifferent above us, offering light without warmth. Cole pulled the mule to a halt beside a low stretch of land where the wind broke just enough to matter. "This'll do," he said. No wasted words, no explanation. He climbed down first, boots hitting the ground with a dull, certain sound. I followed after a second, slower this time, my legs stiff from the ride and the long walk before it. The cold struck harder on the ground. It moved straight through me, no wagon wall to soften it now. I tightened my hold on the bundle, though it offered little. Cloth and bread did not keep out a night like this. Cole was already moving. He unhitched the mule with practiced hands, checking the straps, running his palm once along its neck. The animal leaned into it slightly, as if it knew the motion. Then he tied it off near a patch of grass that hadn't yet gone brittle with the season. "Fire," he said, not looking at me. "You know how?" "Yes." "Then make one." That was all. No instruction, no watching to see if I hesitated. I set the bundle down carefully, choosing a place where the ground felt less exposed. Then I moved, scanning the dark for what I needed. Dry grass first, then small sticks, then something thicker to hold it once it caught. My fingers were stiff, slower than they should have been. I had to work them open more than once, pressing them against my skirt to bring back some feeling. The land did not offer much. What I found, I took. A handful here, a broken branch there. Nothing wasted, nothing certain to last. I struck the flint twice before it caught. The first spark died quick, swallowed by the cold air. The second found the dry edge of grass and held just long enough. I leaned close, shielding it with my hands, breathing slow and steady until it took. A small flame, then another. It grew carefully, uncertain at first, then steadier as I fed it what little I had gathered. Not large, not wasteful, just enough. Cole returned when it was already burning. He carried a small crate from the wagon, setting it down near the fire without a word. The light caught his face then, hard lines softened just slightly by the flicker. "Good," he said. It wasn't praise, just acknowledgement. He opened the crate and pulled out a pot, dented along one side, and a small sack tied tight at the top. Beans by the look of it. Maybe a scrap of salt pork if there was luck in it. "Water's low," he said. "We don't waste it." "I understand." He handed me the pot, another test. I took it and moved without asking, measured what little water he passed over, added the beans, set it near the edge of the fire where it would heat slow, not scorch. It was the kind of work that didn't need words, only attention. Behind me I heard movement. I turned slightly. The wagon shifted, and from its shadow 4 small shapes began to stir. Children. I hadn't seen them before, hidden beneath blankets in the low sides of the wagon bed. One sat up first, a girl, maybe 10, her hair loose and tangled from sleep. She watched me without speaking, eyes sharp in the firelight. The others followed slower. 2 boys, close in age, and the smallest, a child no more than 4, still half wrapped in a blanket, blinking against the light. They didn't come close. They stayed near the wagon, quiet, measuring me the same way their father had. I turned back to the fire, let them watch. Cole stepped beside them, saying something low I couldn't hear. The girl nodded once, then looked back at me again, this time longer. The pot began to warm. A faint scent rose with the steam, simple and plain, but enough to pull something sharp from my stomach. Hunger, no longer quiet now, no longer patient. I ignored it, waited. When it was ready, I shifted the pot back slightly, letting it settle. Cole took a tin bowl and filled it first for the smallest child, handing it over without ceremony. No one spoke. They ate the same way they watched, careful, measured, without waste. When my turn came, he handed me a portion no larger than the others. Fair, nothing extra. I took it and sat near the edge of the fire, where the heat reached but did not linger. The warmth felt unfamiliar, not because it was gone, but because I hadn't expected to feel it again so soon. Across the fire, Cole watched me once more. Not unkind, not welcoming, just certain. I understood then. This place, this wagon, this fire, this fragile circle of light in the cold was not something given. It was something held together by work, and if I wanted to remain inside it, I would have to earn every inch of it. We reached the house just before noon the next day. I knew it was a house only because Cole slowed the wagon. Otherwise, it might have passed for a pile of wood that had lost its will to stand. The structure leaned slightly to one side, the roof sagging where the boards had bowed under weather and time. One corner had been braced with a rough post, cut uneven and driven into the ground at an angle that spoke of urgency, not care. The yard was bare. No fence held it. No clear boundary marked where living space began and ended. Just trampled earth, scattered tools, and a line of split wood stacked with more intention than the house itself. Cole pulled the mule to a stop. "This is it," he said. I climbed down without asking. Up close, the damage was clearer. Gaps between the boards where wind would slip through without effort. The door hung slightly off true, its hinge worn enough that it didn't quite meet the frame. The chimney leaned, not enough to fall, but enough to warn. This place wasn't failing, it was holding on. The children moved first this time. The oldest girl jumped down from the wagon, landing steady despite the height. She crossed the yard quickly, pushing the door open with her shoulder before it stuck. The others followed slower, each one knowing where to step, where not to. They belonged here. I did not. Cole began unloading without pause. "Inside," he said, handing me a small sack. "Food goes left. Wood by the stove." I took it and stepped through the door. The air inside was colder than it should have been. Not the sharp cold of outside, but a hollow kind. The kind that settles into walls and refuses to leave. It smelled faintly of ash, damp wood, and something else. Something old that had lingered too long without being cleared. The room was small. One table, rough cut and uneven at the legs. A stove set near the far wall, its iron surface dull and scratched. A narrow bed pushed into the corner, blankets folded but thin. Another smaller space beyond, half hidden by a hanging cloth that served as a door. Everything had been used past its proper life. I set the sack where he had said and moved to the woodpile near the stove. Too small. Not enough for the cold that was already coming. I didn't say it out loud. Cole stepped in behind me, carrying another crate. He set it down near the table and looked around once, quick and measuring. "Fire," he said again. I was already moving. The stove took time to catch. The wood was dry enough, but the draft was poor. I adjusted the vent, shifted the kindling, tried again. The first flame struggled, bending low before it found its place. I fed it carefully, not too much, not too fast. The heat began slow, barely noticeable at first, but it was there. That mattered. Behind me, the children settled into their places without being told. The oldest girl, she hadn't given me her name yet, set a pot on the table and began sorting what little food they had. One of the boys carried in more wood, stacking it where I had left space. The smallest sat near the wall, watching everything with wide, quiet eyes. They moved like this